How's it going, everybody? It's Stock Picks by Tim, and I wanted to get into Cleanspark here today. I mostly wanted to go over the technicals, but I do want to talk about earnings for a second here. And I want to let you know at the end of this video, I'm going to leave a clip of the earnings call. Now, it was about a 20-something minute long call. I cut it down into about 5 minutes of some important parts that I want you guys to take note of and listen to. So we did beat our revenue like we were hoping for, and we got 27 million. I mean, from the beginning, guys, I wasn't expecting this to be a positive EPS yet. You know, we are working on expansion, we're working on scaling. And another thing to take note of here is there was a little bit of dilution of stock. So overall, I think their earnings went all right. It's good to see that revenue increasing. What I don't like is that there was really not much talk on the earnings call about the microgrid or solar side of things. Now, they did go over it more in the SEC filings. They talk about the microgrid a little bit more. I'm going to go over the 10K in a second here. But yeah, we did beat revenue, so that's good. We did miss our EPS, although it wasn't too horrible. I mean, it was negative 9 cents. It is nice to see an improvement over the last quarter. And think about this. Their earnings that they got, 27.1 million, was actually a 1,300% increase from that same quarter a year ago. So they're making steps in the right direction. And another thing to take note of that I got from that earnings call was 87 million in their mining equipment is already prepaid for. So they're going to continue to add to that hash rate. And one thing to take note of is right now, as of what they said, they were at 1.3 exahash. Next year, we should expect to get to 2 exahash and then above. And their net loss for this year was 21 million compared to 23 million of the year before it. So they are making a step in the right direction. Now, one thing to see here though is their payroll expenses is quite high, 25 million. That's kind of interesting. And one thing that I wish I really would have heard more about was their microgrid side of things with the earnings call. They are really just talking about Bitcoin. It seems to be what's building the hype and what people are really interested in. But I would like to hear more about their microgrid. And seeing that it's becoming more and more like a Bitcoin miner, I'd be very weary as we get into the next halving, and likely by then I would probably bounce from this stock. Likely by then. It all depends though. I mean, if they use this Bitcoin mining to build out further and work more towards their microgrid, that would be great. But so far it seems like they're kind of putting microgrids on the back burner. Now, they did mention that there's supply constraint problems, and that is part of the issue. And another thing to see is that their energy hardware, software, and services, they did make 9 million on the year. Okay, but it was the same last year, and that's why they said they were flat in that earnings call. So it would be nice to see more expansion in that side of things. Otherwise, they're basically just a Bitcoin miner. But at the same time, there was a lot of problems this year with supply. So I mean, I could see that. But I will be very closely watching and listening to see more good news about their actual microgrid side of things. Because if this is the case that it's just a Bitcoin miner, just being that I'm so overextended into the crypto space, I really wanted this for the microgrid side of things as a bonus. And I mean, at the same time, I will be holding it because it is nice to see that revenue increasing. And they're expecting the same forward guidance. They didn't really increase or decrease it from what I understand. It's just the same. It definitely could have gone better with getting closer towards being profitable and not being as negative EPS as we are. And you do have to consider that we did issue some more shares. So we did actually issue about 20 million commons, it looks like, over last year when you're looking from a year-over-year perspective. So I will bring the earnings call here, and they do go over this for a second and talk about that they're going to be really working on using Bitcoin and utilizing the fact that they have so much Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And instead of diluting more shareholders, which, I mean, I don't know, they're very likely to still continue diluting, but hopefully not as much as they have been. But it is something you have to be aware of. We're shareholders, we don't want that dilution. That definitely devalues what you currently have. And I believe Zach Bradford actually mentioned it, that, they're obviously shareholders too. They don't want dilution. They want to utilize their Bitcoin towards expanding and things of that nature, which I honestly like that idea. And especially if Bitcoin can have a nice run, preferably, make moves with the Bitcoin that they have during times of extreme greed. Not times like this where a lot of people expect Bitcoin to potentially go down. I personally see it continuing in an uptrend. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but over the years, Cleanspark might regret over the years selling Bitcoin at this price, but at the same time, it's the cost of expanding. And if you can sell your Bitcoin to create more miners to mine even more Bitcoin, it just, to me, that makes more sense, at least from a shareholder standpoint, being that having the sense of not wanting to be more diluted. I'd much prefer that than to see more, shares being issued. That's just a thought. And so, yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. And people are also negative about how they said they're at 1.3 exahash when people were hoping by the end of the year to be at 2. But they do still have some time, and they are working on powering the rest of their miners that they have. Sorry, I don't have the number in my head, but they had like 20 to 28 megawatts waiting to get going. They just had to power them, essentially, is what they said. So I'm going to get into the technicals real quick, and then I'm going to leave you guys with that clip for the earnings report. Cut it up into like 4 or 5 minutes. But yeah, it was like a 20-something minute long call. And let's get into the technicals, though. Now, looking at Cleanspark, we had a pretty decent day. At first we fell off with most of the market. I woke up, saw a lot of the market red. Of course, we had the Fed speech. And then once he started talking, I think Jerome Powell actually did a really pretty great job. But they don't seem to have a very tough stance on inflation from what I'm starting to see, from what I understand. And kind of to me sounded like they're kicking the can down the road. But we did have a nice run with Cleanspark. And I think the pain is over from that earnings. The negative EPS and just the no news of any kind of microgrid stuff. All those people got out. Now, we did reach a pretty nice support, just like we did with last earnings. It's kind of the same story, except for last earnings, it was more about executive-based compensation, which caused this drop, and found this base right here, which, if you look at this, it's uncanny. I mean, they landed right in the same area, and this was right after earnings. And the EPS missed, of course, but revenue was good. So it's kind of interesting to see that. This was more of an executive-based compensation drop, and this was more of a, we're not doing energy, we're not moving forwards too much on the energy side of things, on the microgrid side of things. It was kind of just really focused on Bitcoin, but they did go more into it. If you read through their SEC filings and stuff, they do mention the microgrid a little bit more. So I do think the downside is over. I mean, you see this clear support. I personally would be very comfortable buying even where it's at. In my opinion, I think even where it's at, to me, is a great buy, and I'm more than happy to get Cleanspark here. And, it is good to see that revenue increase, and that's what we were here for. That's what I'm hoping for. Next quarter, we might see a positive EPS finally. Who knows? I'm just hoping that we get closer towards profitability. And I will be keeping an eye on the payroll side of things, because they did over the year pay out about 25 million so far. And that's one thing to consider. That's basically all I got for you guys. I'm going to leave you guys with that clip now, but take it easy and have a great day.
We also achieved our projected revenue with almost $50 million for the year. We believe the market is just catching on and will soon recognize and close what we see as a market value gap. We believe that our continued performance is what will help us close that gap. We're laser focused on shareholder value. One way we do this is by using some of our Bitcoin we hold to fund operations and growth. We are pursuing non-dilutive growth capital such as debt. Now, our energy revenues were essentially flat year over year, and it's been a challenging year for the energy industry as a whole. But we believe the way to drive the greatest increase in value to our shareholders is by applying our energy expertise into sustainable Bitcoin mining. Now, we are deploying advanced technologies like renewable energy assets and immersion cooling to make our operations more efficient. Now, efficiency is key, and these efficiency enhancements are expected to increase production and decrease operating costs at all of our facilities. As an added benefit, these systems are also expected to extend the life of our machines so that our capital goes further to generate better returns for our shareholders. Our 2021 annual revenue, as I mentioned, grew from $10 million to $49 million, representing a 5x increase in revenue from our prior year. We expect that this growth will continue into next year as Cleanspark expands its mining capabilities as we deploy more miners and seek out additional energy opportunities. Now, our non-GAAP adjusted EBITDA for the year was approximately $9 million in income, or 31 cents per share. That's a significant improvement from last year. Now, our improvements, both on a GAAP and non-GAAP basis, are encouraging, and we are taking steps to further streamline our operations, and we expect to achieve even stronger results for our shareholders in the coming year. Revenues for the 3 months ended September 30th, 2021 was $27.1 million. This is an increase of $25.2 million, or nearly a 1,300% increase from 1.9 million for the same quarter just a year ago. We had a cash balance at the end of the year of 18 million and a book value of Bitcoin of 23.6 million. Now, this resulted in working capital of 47.6 million. The company's total liabilities were only 11.7 million. Now, our net assets were 305.7 million. This means we grew our net assets by a factor of over 19 times since the start of this fiscal year. We are ecstatic about the strength of our balance sheet and the strong foundation it has created for growth into 2022. In addition to the miners that we had on hand, we also have prepaid an additional 87.9 million for mining equipment. Subsequent to our fiscal year end, we've received over 4,400 additional miners. The new machines received and ordered will further increase our production capabilities and revenues in the coming quarter. Now, lastly, I'd like to share that we have a substantial number of machines plugged in and ready to go. We are just waiting the final commissioning process to energize additional mobile data centers, and when that occurs in the next few weeks, we expect to see an immediate and substantial jump in our hash rate.
We expect to keep our revenue and Bitcoin production targets as we've discussed in prior guidance.
Industry reports indicate that immersion cooling allows the miners to operate above the label hash rate. Does the company anticipate the ability to overclock the rigs at Norcross?
Immersion cooling, we're extremely excited about. Now, I'm sure, the way the question was posed, many people have read about immersion cooling and the exciting things that you can do. As I mentioned earlier, it's all about efficiency. Now, I want to address what overclock really means for those of you that don't know. What overclock means is you're able to push the machines at a faster rate of processing than the manufacturer label on it. Now, the reason you're able to do so is because you're able to control the heat around it. That's really a limiting factor when it comes to miners and how quick they can process and how hard you can push them. It's all about heat transfer. When you immerse them in a liquid, this liquid, of course, is a non-conductive material from an electricity point of view. The heat transfer is much more efficient, which means you can push them harder because you don't have to worry about them overheating. So now to turn back to the question, do we think we're going to be able to overclock them? Absolutely. We're really excited about some of the developments for the 19 series that we're going to be putting in that facility. Overclocking is still being developed, so we don't quite know if we're going to be able to push them, exactly what the percentage improvement is, but we know we're going to be able to push them further.
Cleanspark took the position of selling Bitcoin for expansion to avoid dilution. In retrospect, was this the best decision, and does the company expect to continue this practice?
Now, Matt and I are two of the largest individual shareholders in the company, and so just like all of our shareholders, we're extremely conscious of dilution. And, our belief is it was absolutely the right move. If you think about Bitcoin mining, we're here to generate value. But if you never turn that into useful assets or additional growth, it's just a number on a balance sheet. So rather than add additional dilution to our shareholders through another equity raise or things like that, we really think it's important to take other steps, such as selling and monetizing the Bitcoin, but also, we're going to pursue other things like debt. Now, anything that protects our shareholders from dilution, we see as a positive thing.